Hi, and welcome to the Knitting Proficiency Skills tutorial on invisible increases. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to do something they call an invisible increase. And just by nature of the name of the increase, it might be a little bit difficult to get this on camera, but we'll see how it goes. But basically the invisible increase, you can see this little V that I've done a couple increases already. So the fabric actually goes out into a gusset, and that's typically what it's used for, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the uses after we go through and demonstrate how to do it. So let's get right to it. So there's a left-leaning version and a right-leaning version. We're going to start with the right-leaning version. I do it inside my stitch marker. So I'm going to go up to my first stitch marker and slip that one off to the right. Slip my stitch marker, and normally without any increase we just knit into the next stitch by inserting our right hand needle into the front of the next needle, in front of the first leg and behind the second leg of the stitch. Instead we're going to put the tip of our right hand needle behind the first leg and down into the second loop or the second stitch below our current stitch. So it's this loop that we're actually going to knit into, but you enter it using your right hand needle and go into the front to the back, wrap that stitch and pull it through, and that creates your increase. So you insert from front to back into that stitch below and knit to create the increase, and then you just normally knit the next stitch, and that creates your right-leaning invisible increase. Let's go over to the left side of this gusset. All the way up to the stitch marker. And in this particular case, we're going to be knitting into the second stitch from the current one. So we have the current stitch, the stitch below the current stitch, that little hole right there, and then the whole two stitches below the current stitch. So in essence, we're going to be knitting into this hole right here. And in order to do that, I usually use my right hand needle and lift that stitch onto the left hand needle. And so I basically move it to the left hand needle as if to knit. And now you see I've gotten, there's my current stitch, there's my current stitch, there's a stitch below it, and I've picked up the stitch 2 below it. And then I just knit into it. Let me show you that one more time. So I'm going to undo that. So I knit up to my stitch marker. I find the stitch 2 below, which is this one right here, this loop right here, pick up the left leg of that stitch and loop it onto my left hand needle as if to knit. So I slip it over to the left as if to knit, and then I knit into it. And that's the left-leaning invisible increase. I'm going to do the setup so I can have the setup ready to go, and I'll do this again in slow motion, but I'll also show you what it looks like in regular motion before I do. So let me get to that place after I've done 3 more plain rounds, and I'll get back to you at that point. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where I've added on 3 rows plain after our last increase. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So if I count down, get this out of the shade a little bit. If I count down 3 rows, it's 1, 2, 3, and you see how we've actually picked up this stitch here and made a right-leaning increase over there. And at the same place over here, we've made a left-leaning increase by picking up stitches on the left-hand side of that stitch. When this gets blocked out, it really does become rather invisible. And I just want to show you the opposite side so that you get a sense about what it looks like there. So if you're looking at reverse stockinette or a reversible garment, it actually doesn't look that much different in terms of it's still invisible even on the wrong side of the fabric or the non-public side of your fabric as well. So let's take a look in slow motion about how to do a right-leaning invisible increase and then a left-leaning invisible increase. And now we'll go ahead and do the left-leaning invisible increase. Slightly more complex than the right-leaning because in essence you've already knitted the stitch into which you're knitting below, and so you have to go 2 down instead of just 1 down. But here's the slow motion version of that. And it's as easy as that. Thanks for watching this Knitting Proficiency Skills tutorial on invisible increases. If you have any questions, please feel free to write a comment, or if you have any comments that you'd like to make about the video or anything else you'd like to see a tutorial on as part of the Knitting Proficiency Skills tutorial sequence of tutorials, be glad to do that. You can also, I'll put a link to a full playlist of all the different tutorials that you can watch that we've done here. And thanks for watching.